The lights of the Zirath Interstellar Casino shimmered like a galaxy trapped in crystal. The tall halls echoed with the hum of alien voices, soft mechanical clicks, and the distant chime of high-stakes betting machines. Princess Lyra of the Zandari Empire walked in, her cloak flowing behind her, silver embroidery catching the neon glow. Her long, violet hair framed sharp, elegant features, and her golden eyes scanned the room with quiet confidence. She was here not for pleasure, but for power. The Zandari nobles often underestimated her. Many thought she was naive, a princess who preferred diplomacy over daring. But Lyra had a hunger for something more. She wanted to prove herself, not to her people, not to her family, but to herself. Tonight she would take a risk no Zandari had ever dared. A crowd parted as she approached the central gaming table. The game was ancient, legendary, and deadly. It was called Starlight Roulette, a blend of chance, strategy, and intuition. Nobles from across the galaxy came here for it, and losing could ruin a life, or even cost it. But Lyra thrived on danger, Princesse. Lyra, said a smooth voice. It belonged to Baron Thal, the casino owner. He was a tall alien with translucent blue skin, eyes like molten silver, and a reputation for both generosity and cruelty. To what do we owe the honor of your presence? Lyra smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. I am tired of waiting, Baron. Tonight I take my destiny in my hands. Baron raised a brow. A dangerous choice. Lyra ignored him. She walked to the table. Around her, nobles whispered, glancing nervously at the princess. Many had played the game and lost fortunes, or their honor. But she didn't care. She only cared about proving that she was more than a puppet in the Zandari court. The game began. Lyra studied the glowing board, each segment representing cosmic elements, strange symbols, and hidden paths. Players placed their stakes, credits, treasures, even secrets. Lyra placed her bet, her personal wealth, her rarest gems, and her pride. The dealer, a robotic entity with crystalline limbs, spun the starlight wheel. The wheel glowed brighter, faster, as if it sensed the princess's intent. Around her, players murmured, some cheering, some cursing. Lyra's heart beat faster. She could feel the tension of every spectator, the weight of her gamble. Hours passed. Cards, cubes, and spinning lights blurred. Lyra used all her skills, intuition, strategy, and a little luck. She won some rounds, lost a few, but her confidence never wavered. Then came the final spin. The wheel slowed, lights flickering, revealing the final outcome. Lyra's stomach sank. She had miscalculated. The wheel landed on the segment she had feared, the price of defeat. Gasps filled the hall. Some nobles whispered in disbelief. Baron Thal's silver eyes glimmered with amusement. Princess Lyra, he said, his voice calm, you have lost. You know the penalty. Lyra straightened, hiding the shock. The penalty was infamous. It had ruined the lives of many noble gamblers before her. Losing the game meant the loser must marry a human from the Sol system. The room fell silent. Humans were considered inferior by the Zandari, a species of fragile bodies, short lives, and unpredictable minds. To marry one was seen as humiliation, a mark of disgrace for any. Zandari noble Lyra's hands clenched at her sides. She had gambled to prove herself, and now she faced a punishment that felt like chains. Her mind raced. There had to be a loophole. There had to be a way out. But even as she thought, Baron Thal's voice cut through her storm of thoughts. The human shall be prepared, he said. You depart within the next cycle. Resistance is pointless. Lyra bowed her head, her pride warring with reality. She left the table, walking through the crowd of whispering nobles. Every eye in the hall followed her. She was humiliated, yet something inside her refused to break. That night, in her private chamber aboard her personal star cruiser, Lyra gazed out at the swirling stars. Her fingers traced the edge of the ancient star map etched into the hull. A human, she thought. How could this be my destiny? The message arrived shortly after. A ship was en route to retrieve her. The pilot's credentials flashed. Captain Elias Kane, Sol System. Human. Lyra studied his file. Human, male, skilled pilot. Reputation for survival. Clever, resourceful. Still inferior, she reminded herself, but curiosity flickered. He was not an ordinary human. Perhaps he could teach her something, or perhaps she could bend the situation to her advantage. By the next morning, she boarded the transfer shuttle with Barenthal's escort. The journey to Earth was long, and she spent it planning her escape, or at least ways to negotiate her freedom. She learned about human culture in fragments, reading reports, observing starship logs, and analyzing psychology reports. When the shuttle landed on a bustling spaceport orbiting Earth, she saw him for the first time. Elias Kane stepped out from his ship, tall, lean, and confident. His dark hair and hazel eyes were ordinary by alien standards, but there was something in his gaze, intelligence, cunning, and an undeniable spark of daring. "Princess Lyra?" he asked politely, though a grin touched his lips. "I guess we're partners now." Lyra's jaw tightened. She had expected fear, hesitation, or awkwardness, but this human, he was bold, unafraid, and calm. She studied him carefully. Humans were unpredictable, she reminded herself, but there was more to him than met the eye. "You will address me as Princess Lyra," she said sharply. "And this arrangement is temporary. I will find a way to end it." Elias tilted his head, amused. "Temporary or not, we have to travel to your homeworld together. And if we're honest, Princess, it's safer if we cooperate." Lyra's pride flared, but she nodded. She could not escape immediately. Not yet. But she would watch him, test him, and plan her next move. The journey from Earth to the Zandari homeworld would take weeks. They would pass through uncharted space, pirate-infested sectors, and cosmic storms. It was a test of skill, courage, and patience. Lyra realized with a flicker of irritation that the human might be more useful alive than dead. During the first few hours aboard the ship, Lyra observed Elias closely. He monitored the engines, calculated trajectories, and even adjusted their shields without asking for approval. She frowned. Humans were supposed to be weak and limited, yet here was one, doing things many aliens struggled with. This human is not ordinary, she thought. Perhaps he is worth watching. Elias, on the other hand, studied Lyra just as intently. He saw a princess burdened with duty, pride, and fear, someone used to control but suddenly thrust into an impossible situation. He didn't see an alien to underestimate. He saw a partner, clever, sharp, and resourceful. The shuttle slipped into warp speed, stars stretching into streams of light. Lyra leaned back, her mind racing. She had gambled, lost, and now faced a fate she had never imagined. Yet deep inside, she felt a spark of excitement. Challenges were her element. Risk was her ally. If she could survive this journey, if she could outsmart the universe, perhaps she could turn her punishment into power. The shuttle hummed through the void, warp engines stretching the stars into long, brilliant streaks of light. Princess Lyra sat stiffly in her seat, eyes fixed on the glowing viewports. The Zandari homeworld was still days away, but every passing moment deepened her sense of unease. Captain Elias Kane moved through the cabin with calm efficiency, checking systems, adjusting controls, and muttering calculations under his breath. Lyra watched him carefully. He seemed ordinary at first, human, lean, and confident, but there was a precision in his actions that hinted at something extraordinary. "You seem very capable for a human," Lyra said finally, her voice sharp but curious. Elias glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "I could say the same about you, Princess, but let's be honest, you're supposed to be royalty, right? I'd expect less flair and more rules. You're not exactly following the script." Lyra frowned. She had expected arrogance, disrespect, or even fear. Instead, he was calm, composed, and not entirely unpleasant. "I follow my own rules, And unlike you humans, we do not make mistakes easily. Elias chuckled softly. Funny. I've met plenty of humans who don't make mistakes either, but they still get into trouble. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Underestimate him at your own peril, she reminded herself. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. The shuttle shuddered, violently throwing both of them against the walls. Red warning lights flashed, and the control panels emitted urgent beeps. Pirates, Elias muttered, his hands flying over the console. They're trying to intercept us. Hang on. Lyra's instincts kicked in. She had trained for situations like this: combat simulations, escape protocols, and tactical maneuvers. She moved to assist, her knowledge of alien systems giving her an edge. Shields at full. Divert power to forward engines. Prepare countermeasures. Elias glanced at her, surprised. Not bad, for a princess. Together they coordinated the shuttle's defenses. Lyra directed shield energy, recalibrated navigational vectors, and even hacked a minor system of the pirate ship. Using her knowledge of Zandari technology, Elias fired precision plasma bursts, disrupting the attackers' engines and forcing them to retreat. After the threat passed, the cabin fell silent except for the hum of the engines. Lyra leaned back, heart racing, and met Elias's gaze. You humans are more competent than I expected, and you aliens are more dangerous than I expected, he replied with a wry grin. We're starting to understand each other, princess. Lyra's pride bristled, but there was a spark of grudging respect. She had expected a weak, fragile human. Instead, she had a partner who was clever, resourceful, and unafraid to face danger. As the shuttle returned to normal speed, Lyra reflected on the irony of her situation. She had gambled to assert her independence, and now her punishment had forced her into a partnership with a species she once considered inferior. Yet for the first time in her life, she felt a strange thrill, an opportunity to learn, to challenge herself, and perhaps even to turn the situation to her advantage. Over the next few days, Lyra and Elias faced several challenges. Cosmic storms rattled the shuttle, requiring precise navigation through gravitational anomalies. Rogue drones and territorial alien scouts tested their ability to respond quickly. Each time they relied on a combination of human ingenuity and Zandari knowledge to survive. Through these trials, a slow understanding began to develop. Lyra realized that humans were not weak. They were adaptable, clever, and unpredictable, in ways that often gave them an advantage. Elias realized that Zandari were not arrogant. They were disciplined, intelligent, and capable of extraordinary feats when pushed. One evening, as they repaired minor damage to the shuttle's hull, Elias spoke quietly. You know, Princess, I've never met someone like you. Most people I work with are straightforward, predictable. You're a puzzle. Lyra raised an eyebrow. A puzzle? How flattering. He shrugged. Not flattery. Observation. You think in ways humans don't. You plan, anticipate, and you hide your fears well. But I can see them if I look closely enough. Lyra considered this, her golden eyes thoughtful. And what do you see when you look at me, Captain Kane? Potential, he said simply. Strength, courage, and maybe a bit of stubbornness. Lyra smiled faintly. You humans are strange. You speak plainly, yet you see deeper than many of my own people. Their growing respect was tested when a distress signal flashed on the shuttle's console. A nearby cargo freighter had been attacked by a gang of space raiders. Normally, Elias would have ignored it. Human protocol prioritized survival over heroics, but Lyra's eyes burned with determination. We cannot ignore them, she said firmly. We have the capability to help. We must act. Elias hesitated. It's dangerous. We could be delayed, or worse, ambushed ourselves. Lyra's hand hovered over the controls. And yet, if we do nothing, innocent lives will be lost. Tell me, human, do you always calculate risks, or do you sometimes act for the right reason? Elias met her gaze, and for a moment the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then he nodded. All right. Let's do it your way. They altered course and approached the freighter. The raiders were already attacking, firing energy blasts that tore through cargo containers. Lyra coordinated the shuttle's defenses while Elias piloted with precision, dodging blasts and creating openings. Together, they used a combination of Xandari tech and human improvisation to disable the raiders' weapons and drive them away. When the freighter's crew cheered over comms, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. Elias glanced at her, impressed. "You really enjoy this, don't you?" "I enjoy justice," she replied simply, "and I enjoy proving that I am not powerless." That night, as they resumed their journey, an uneasy but growing trust developed between them. Lyra began to see Elias not as a punishment, but as a potential ally, someone who could match her intellect, challenge her skills, and survive alongside her. Elias in turn respected her courage, her strategic mind, and the way she refused to be intimidated by danger. Yet even as they worked together, Lyra's mind remained alert. She knew the Xandari homeworld would not welcome a human as her partner. She knew the nobles would plot against her, seeing this marriage as an insult to their pride. She had to be ready. "We are not safe yet," Lyra said quietly, staring at the stars. "When we arrive, the true challenge begins. The humans and the Xandari have very different ways of thinking. We must be careful and clever." Elias nodded. "I can handle clever. As for careful, we'll see." For the rest of the journey, they continued their cautious partnership. Lyra taught Elias about Xandari tactics, alien diplomacy, and starship technology. Elias shared human improvisation techniques, logic shortcuts, and survival strategies. Slowly their synergy improved, but neither could forget the shadow that awaited them, the Xandari homeworld. Nobles who despised humans would scrutinize every move. Judges would watch every decision. And behind it all, the memory of Lyra's lost gamble lingered, a mistake that had forced her into this improbable alliance. Lyra realized, with a mix of frustration and determination, that she had only begun to understand the human she had been forced to marry. And she knew, deep inside, that she would need every ounce of her skill, courage, and wit to survive what awaited on her homeworld, and, perhaps, to survive herself. As the shuttle slipped closer to the Xandari homeworld, Lyra and Elias prepared for the inevitable trials. They were from different worlds, different species, and different cultures, but together they were stronger than either had imagined. And in the vastness of space, amid danger and uncertainty, a new partnership, and perhaps something more, was beginning to form. Princess Lyra's punishment had brought her into an alliance she had never wanted, yet for the first time in her life, she felt alive, not just surviving, but ready to face the universe on her own terms. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and she knew the game was far from over. The shuttle cut through the endless blackness of space, stars streaking past like silver rivers. Princess Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat, her eyes sharp, her mind focused. Captain Elias Kane at the helm was calm and precise, adjusting the ship's trajectory as they navigated through an increasingly dangerous route. Their journey to the Xandari homeworld was far from simple. Warp corridors were often patrolled by pirates, mercenaries, and rival alien factions. Elias had chosen the shortest path, but it passed through sectors notorious for ambushes. Lyra watched the radar, noting the faint blips that signaled incoming. "Threats, Elias," she said, pointing to a small cluster of fast-moving ships on the radar. "We're being followed." Elias's jaw tightened. Pirates. They're small, fast, and desperate, probably expecting an easy human target. They don't know what's coming. Lyra's lips curved into a faint, confident smile. They will learn. The first wave of attackers emerged suddenly, sleek black ships darting toward them like predatory fish. Plasma bolts streaked across the void, hitting the shuttle's shields with sizzling energy. The hull rattled, lights flickering. Elias took a deep breath and pushed the controls, weaving the shuttle through a complex dance. "Hold on, Princess. This is going to be tight." Lyra quickly assessed their options. "Divert shield power to the front. Use the asteroids ahead for cover. I'll guide fire to the weak points in their engines. Elias raised an eyebrow, impressed. You don't waste time giving orders. I like that. Working together, they maneuvered through the debris field. Lyra's commands and calculations were flawless, predicting the pirate ship's movements. Elias fired targeted plasma bursts, crippling 2 of the smaller attackers. The remaining pirates faltered, clearly surprised by the shuttle's agility and coordinated defense. Finally, with a final burst of speed, they escaped the ambush. The shuttle drifted for a moment in the calm aftermath, the stars returning to normal as if nothing had happened. Lyra exhaled, tension leaving her shoulders. Not bad for a human pilot, she said, though there was no trace of sarcasm. And not bad for a princess with a death wish, Elias replied with a grin. Despite the danger, something had changed between them. The crisis had forced them to work together, and with every decision, every maneuver, their trust grew. Lyra began to see Elias as more than a human. He was a partner, clever, resourceful, and courageous. Elias, in turn, respected Lyra's intelligence, her quick thinking and her determination to survive. But space had more tests in store. Days later, a cosmic storm appeared on the sensors, a swirling maelstrom of energy, debris, and radiation. It was massive, and no ship dared enter without careful navigation. Lyra studied the storm on the display. We can cut through it, she said, but it will be dangerous. We'll need to time the bursts, adjust shields continuously, and keep engines at maximum output. Elias nodded. I trust your judgment, Princess. Let's do it. The shuttle entered the storm, buffeted by gravitational waves and electrical discharges. Instruments flickered, and the hull creaked under pressure. Lightning-like plasma arcs danced across the viewport. Lyra and Elias worked in perfect synchrony, Elias piloting with precision, Lyra calculating angles, shield distribution, and optimal pathways. For hours, they battled the storm. At one point, a massive surge hit the shuttle, throwing both of them across the cabin. Lyra's fingers flew over the controls, stabilizing the ship. Elias shouted instructions, rerouting power and avoiding debris. Together, they survived where, alone, either of them might have failed. When they finally emerged on the other side, exhausted but unharmed, Lyra allowed herself a faint smile. Humans are stronger than they seem, she said, her tone almost admiring. Elias chuckled, rubbing a bruise on his arm. And Zandari are more stubborn than they seem. I've never met anyone who refused to panic under pressure like you. They laughed, the tension of survival easing slightly. But the journey was far from over. The next day, a transmission arrived, distress signals from a mining station near the Warp Junction Gamma. It was under attack from a rogue alien mercenary group. Lyra hesitated. They were already risking enough, but her instincts could not ignore the call for help. We cannot leave them, she said firmly. We have the means to assist. Elias studied the map. It's a diversion. If we help them, we risk being late to your homeworld, and more importantly, we risk the shuttle. Lyra's golden eyes flashed. I will not sit idle while innocents suffer. If you refuse, we will do it my way. Elias grinned. All right, Princess. Let's save some lives and see if we survive. They approached the station carefully. Mercenary ships fired upon them immediately. Elias maneuvered with expert precision, dodging attacks and using the shuttle's defensive systems. Lyra guided weapon systems to target enemy ships' propulsion and shields. It was chaos, a ballet of lasers, shields, and strategic maneuvers. Lyra and Elias moved as one, their trust and coordination now undeniable. Slowly, they turned the tide. Mercenary ships were disabled, forced to retreat, and the mining station was saved. The station commander hailed them, relief and gratitude clear in their voice. Lyra allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. Sometimes, she murmured, helping others is the greatest strength. Elias looked at her, admiration in his eyes. You're starting to understand humans better than you think, Princess. Lyra smiled faintly, though her mind was already on the next challenge. Reaching, her homeworld. She knew that even with these victories, the real trial awaited them on Zandari soil. Nobles would scrutinize her every move, and her marriage would be tested by jealousy, politics, and tradition. Days passed, and the shuttle continued its journey. Lyra and Elias faced more minor attacks, navigation hazards, and cosmic phenomena, each time refining their teamwork. Slowly a bond formed, not romantic yet, but a deep mutual respect. One night, as they floated through the silent expanse, Lyra looked at Elias. "Do you ever wonder why we survived so far without being destroyed?" Elias tilted his head, thoughtful. "Luck, skill, and stubbornness. And maybe because we make a good team." Lyra considered this. "Perhaps, but I think it is more than that. We understand each other in ways our species do not understand themselves. That may be our real advantage." Elias smiled, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "Then let's keep that advantage. Whatever awaits us, we'll face it together." Lyra nodded, feeling a strange calm. The dangers of space had tested them, but they had survived, not just because of skill, but because they trusted each other. And she knew that trust would be crucial once they reached the Zandari homeworld. As the shuttle approached the orbit of her homeworld, the massive cityscapes of towering spires, glowing crystals, and hovering vehicles came into view. The Zandari, nobles would be waiting, curious and judgmental. Many would be hostile. And somewhere, the shadow of her lost gamble loomed, an event that had set this entire journey into motion. Lyra took a deep breath. "We are not just surviving, Elias. We are preparing. The real challenge begins when we land. And I intend to be ready." Elias placed a reassuring hand on the console. "Then we'll face it together. No surprises we can't handle." As the shuttle descended toward the capital city, Lyra felt a thrill of anticipation. Danger, politics, and challenges awaited. But she had already learned something valuable. With the right partner, even the impossible could be managed. She glanced at Elias and allowed herself a faint smile. Perhaps this punishment was not the end. Perhaps it was the beginning of something far greater. The stars above shimmered, indifferent yet full of possibilities, and Princess Lyra realized the universe was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous. But she was ready, and for the first time she felt alive. The real game, the game of survival, politics, and power, was about to begin. The Zandari capital stretched before them like a city from another universe. Towering crystalline spires shimmered with colors that shifted as the light changed, and skyways hummed with hovering vehicles. Princess Lyra's shuttle descended, slowly, every movement precise, but her heart raced. After days of danger and space travel, they had arrived at her homeworld, but she knew the hardest trials were still ahead. Captain Elias Kane, seated at the helm, glanced at her. "Ready to meet your fans?" he said lightly, though his voice carried tension. Lyra's golden eyes narrowed. "Fans? Do not call them that. They are my people, and most of them are waiting to see a human humiliated." Elias shook his head with a small grin. "Not exactly the welcome committee I imagined." The shuttle landed in the central palace docking bay, massive gates opening to reveal a gathering of nobles. They watched in silence, murmuring in Zandari tones. Many faces were familiar to Lyra, cousins, advisors, and rivals, but some were strangers, their expressions unreadable, sharp with curiosity or hostility. A herald stepped forward announcing their arrival, presenting Princess Lyra of the Zandari Empire, returning from the interstellar casino, with Captain Elias Kane of the Sol system. Gasps filled the air. A human? Here? The nobles whispered furiously, exchanging glances of disbelief, outrage, and speculation. Lyra felt a familiar fire of defiance rising inside her. She would not bow, not now, not ever. As they exited the shuttle, Lyra noticed several nobles muttering about the disgrace of her forced marriage. She straightened, head high, refusing to show weakness. Elias, calm and confident, moved beside her, surveying the situation with quiet calculation. Their first challenge came immediately, the marriage ceremony itself. It was traditional, ceremonial, and highly structured, filled with tests to determine the worth of the human. The emperor had decreed it necessary. Elias would have to prove his intelligence, courage, and diplomacy in front of the court. Lyra watched closely as the first trial began, a test of logic and strategy. The emperor's council presented a complex puzzle, a holographic projection, of shifting alien symbols and pathways. If Elias solved it incorrectly, he would fail the trial, bringing shame upon both himself and Lyra. Elias studied the puzzle carefully. Lyra leaned over his shoulder, whispering advice in Zandari terms that humans rarely understood. "Watch the sequence of patterns," she said. "The order is not random. It follows their ancient laws of symmetry." He nodded, following her instructions. Minutes passed, the court silent and tense. Finally, with a precise sequence of moves, Elias solved the puzzle. The council murmured, some impressed despite themselves. Lyra allowed herself a faint smile. One step down, many more to go. The next trial was physical, an obstacle course designed to test endurance, agility, and courage. Aliens of different species would often laugh at humans, assuming they were too fragile for Zandari challenges. Lyra studied the course, noting hazards and weak points. "Follow my lead," she said. "I'll guide you through. Do not hesitate." Elias took a deep breath and followed her instructions. He climbed, leaped, and navigated traps with surprising skill. Lyra offered timely advice, pointing out dangers and calculating risks. When he completed the course, the crowd gasped in surprise. This human had exceeded expectations. Lyra felt a quiet satisfaction. She had chosen to assist him, not out of pity, but because she saw potential. Together, they were stronger. The third trial tested diplomacy. A delegation of rival nobles presented a scenario of a border conflict with a minor alien system. Elias would have to negotiate a solution acceptable to all parties. Failure meant dishonor. Elias listened carefully, analyzing motives, understanding cultural nuances, and applying logic and empathy. Lyra whispered guidance, translating subtle Zandari cues into human terms. In the end, he proposed a solution that balanced justice and compromise, impressing even the harshest critics. By now, murmurs of respect spread through the court. Even nobles who had doubted him could not deny his intelligence and courage. Lyra noted the change. Her people were beginning to see the human not as a punishment but as a capable partner. But the trials also revealed a deeper threat. During the diplomacy challenge, Lyra overheard whispers of a conspiracy. A rival noble family, the Valons, sought to undermine her and seize influence over the emperor. They would use her marriage to a human as leverage, planning to humiliate her or sabotage Elias during the trials. Lyra's mind raced. She could not allow this. Elias had proven himself capable, but they were unprepared for political treachery. She leaned close to him later that night, speaking in a low, urgent tone. "They will try to destroy us," she said. "The Valons want to control the court. They will use any opportunity against us. We must be ready." Elias nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "We'll face them, together. I've survived worse than noble scheming, and I trust your guidance." The next days were tense. The Valons made subtle moves, challenging Elias in public debates, spreading rumors, and attempting minor sabotage. But each time, Lyra and Elias countered skillfully. They used intelligence, strategy, and teamwork to expose missteps and redirect suspicion. Lyra began to notice something remarkable. The emperor, who had initially been skeptical, began to observe them closely, clearly impressed by their coordination and loyalty. Small gestures of approval, a nod here, a question there, hinted that even the ruler was reconsidering his initial disdain for the human. Their partnership was evolving. Elias respected Lyra's courage, her intelligence, and the way she refused to be intimidated by the court. Lyra respected his adaptability, quick thinking, and his unwavering determination despite being an outsider. They were no longer just a princess and her human penalty. They were a team. The final trial approached, a test of loyalty and courage before the emperor himself. A rival faction had arranged a mock threat to the palace, a simulation designed to test the couple's ability to respond under pressure. But Lyra had learned enough to suspect it was more than a test. It was a setup. When the alarm sounded, Lyra and Elias sprang into action. The palace corridors filled with holographic threats, alarms blaring. Lyra guided the security systems, coordinating defensive measures while Elias executed tactical maneuvers to neutralize attackers. The simulation revealed not only skill, but character. The couple demonstrated calm under pressure, trust in one another, and decisiveness. By the time the threat was neutralized, the Emperor and Council were visibly impressed. "You have exceeded expectations," the Emperor said. "Not only has this human proven capable, but you, Princess Lyra, have shown wisdom and judgment in your choice of partner." Lyra inclined her head. Elias gave a modest bow. The court, once skeptical, began to whisper with approval. Even some Valens shifted uneasily, realizing their schemes had failed. That night, Lyra and Elias stood on the balcony of her chambers, overlooking the glowing city. The palace lights reflected in their eyes, a silent acknowledgement of their hard-won success. "Do you realize what we've done?" Elias asked softly. "We survived the trials, exposed the conspirators, and proved that humans and Zandari can work together." "That's impressive," Lyra smiled faintly. "It is more than survival. It is respect. The court may never accept a human fully, but they will respect you and me for standing together. That is power in its own way." Elias looked at her, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "I didn't come here expecting to earn respect, Princess. I came here because I had no choice. But now, I see the possibilities." Lyra's golden eyes softened. "So do I. Perhaps this penalty was not just punishment. Perhaps it is an opportunity, a chance to change our worlds, and maybe even each other." As the night deepened, Lyra realized the truth. The Zandari court could be ruthless, politics could be deadly, but together they could face it. Her punishment had forced her into an impossible marriage, but it had also revealed an unexpected partnership, one built on trust, skill, and the possibility of something greater than either had imagined. The stars above the capital glimmered, distant yet constant, reminding her that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges. But with Elias by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The marriage, once seen as humiliation, was becoming a tool, a symbol of unity, strength, and strategy. And Princess Lyra knew the final challenges were ahead. But for the first time, she felt truly in control of her destiny. The storm of politics had begun, but she was no longer afraid. The palace of the Zandari Empire gleamed under the light of twin moons, its crystal spires reflecting colors that shifted with every passing moment. Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the balcony, gazing down at the courtyard below. The city seemed calm, serene, but she knew better. Beneath its beauty, the currents of politics and ambition flowed like dangerous rivers. Beside her, Captain Elias Kane adjusted the straps of his tactical harness, scanning the city for any unusual activity. "Still nervous?" he asked, a small grin on his face. Lyra shook her head. "No, but alert. The Valens are clever. They have not given up, and I suspect they will act tonight." Elias nodded. "Then we're ready. Together." They had spent the last days preparing. After surviving the marriage trials, earning respect from much of the court, and uncovering minor sabotage, Lyra and Elias had pieced together a troubling truth. The Valens were planning a coup. Using the chaos of the marriage and the court's divided loyalties, they intended to seize power while the Emperor was distracted. Lyra turned to Elias, her golden eyes sharp. "We cannot wait. If they act first, the Empire could fall into chaos." Elias set his jaw. Then let's go get them. Together, they descended into the palace's underlevels, where secret tunnels and maintenance corridors offered a hidden route to the central council chamber. Lyra's knowledge of the palace, gained from years of observation, combined with Elias's human intuition, made them an efficient team. Every corner, every hallway, every guard's patrol was accounted, for they reached the chamber just as the Valens attempted to override the security system and lock the Emperor's advisors inside. Elias quickly interfaced with the controls, while Lyra disabled the energy locks with precise manipulation of Zandari technology. The Valens arrived moments later, flanked by mercenaries. "Princess Lyra," sneered Lord Valen, the eldest of the rival family. "So predictable, you and your human are too late. Surrender and perhaps the Emperor will show mercy." Lyra's voice rang clear and commanding. "Never. This empire is my responsibility, and we will not allow treachery to succeed." Elias stepped forward. "And I'm not going to let anyone hurt her or this world. Consider that a warning." The battle that followed was intense. Energy blasts ricocheted off walls, guards fought, and alarms blared throughout the palace. Lyra and Elias moved as one, her tactical knowledge guiding their positioning, his quick reflexes providing the offensive edge. Each mercenary who underestimated them quickly learned their mistake. At one point, Lord Valen attempted to strike Lyra with an energy blade. Elias intervened, tackling the noble aside. Lyra rolled, using a nearby console to disable the chamber's doors and trap the remaining mercenaries. Together they turned the tide, cornering the Valens and ending the coup attempt before it could reach the Emperor. Breathless, Elias and Lyra stood among the subdued nobles and mercenaries. The Emperor entered, flanked by loyal advisors, his expression a mixture of relief and awe. "Princess Lyra, Captain Kane, you have saved this empire from disaster," he said solemnly. "Your courage, intelligence, and partnership have proven invaluable. I underestimated the strength that humans and the bond between species can achieve." Lyra bowed deeply, her pride tempered by respect. "It was not strength alone, Your Majesty. It was trust, strategy, and determination. We acted together, as equals." Elias nodded. "Humans and Zandari may be different, but when we work together, we can overcome even the impossible." A murmur ran through the council chamber. Nobles who had once doubted Elias now looked at him with cautious respect. Even some of the Valens, shackled and defeated, could not hide their acknowledgement of his skill and bravery. The Emperor stepped closer, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You have turned what many saw as a humiliation into a victory. The court will remember this day, not as a punishment but as a symbol of unity, courage, and the strength of collaboration." Lyra allowed herself a small smile, her heart lighter than it had been since her fateful gamble. She glanced at Elias, who returned her gaze with a quiet warmth that conveyed admiration, respect, and partnership. In the days that followed, the court slowly shifted. Nobles who had opposed the marriage began to see its value, not only as a political alliance, but as a demonstration of human ingenuity and courage. Elias, once a mere outsider, became a respected figure in Zandari politics, and Lyra, no longer just a princess punished for a gamble, emerged as a leader who could bridge worlds, combining her intelligence with the humans' resourcefulness. The Valens were exiled, their plots exposed. Other noble families watched carefully, wary of underestimating the princess and her human partner. And though humans were still considered unusual allies, many began to see their potential in ways that had been previously unthinkable. Lyra reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the gamble at the casino, the punishment that forced her into marriage, the perilous travel through space, and the trials of the court. Each challenge had tested her, shaped her, and revealed unexpected truths, not only about Elias but about her own strength and the potential of humans. One evening, standing on the palace balcony with Elias, she spoke softly. "I never imagined that a punishment could become something greater. that a human could become a partner in both survival and leadership. Elias smiled, looking out over the city. Life has a way of surprising us, Princess. Sometimes what we think is a setback is really an opportunity. Lyra nodded. And sometimes it teaches us that courage, loyalty, and trust are stronger than pride, prejudice, or tradition. Elias placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Then let's keep teaching, together. The Empire, the court, maybe even the galaxy. Lyra smiled, feeling a rare sense of peace. Her gamble had set in motion events that had tested her pride and challenged her limits, but it had also led to unexpected victories, alliances, and respect. She had learned that humans were not weak, and that when two very different species worked together, the impossible became achievable. The stars above, the capital shone brightly, reflecting in the palace crystals, distant yet constant. Lyra knew that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges, but she had survived them all, and she had not survived alone. In the months that followed, she and Elias continued to work together. They reformed the court, strengthened diplomatic ties, and showed the Zandari Empire that humans were allies to be respected rather than underestimated. Their marriage, once seen as humiliation, became a symbol of unity, intelligence, and courage across species. Through all the trials, Lyra and Elias developed a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experiences. They complemented each other perfectly, her discipline and foresight, his ingenuity and adaptability. Together they showed the galaxy that humans were capable, courageous, and sometimes the key to survival and triumph. On a quiet evening, Lyra stood at the palace balcony, looking at the horizon where two moons hung low, casting silver light over the city. Elias stood beside her, silent but present. "We've changed a lot of minds," she said softly. "And we've changed ourselves," he replied. Lyra smiled, the warmth in her chest undeniable. "Yes. And perhaps the galaxy will never underestimate humans again?" Elias nodded, his eyes reflecting the distant stars. "They'll learn. Slowly, maybe. But they'll learn." For the first time since her fateful gamble, Lyra felt no fear. No shame, no uncertainty. Only clarity, purpose, and the knowledge that she had turned her punishment into power, and in doing so, had elevated not only herself, but humanity in the eyes of the galaxy. The adventure that began with a reckless gamble had ended in triumph, but the story was far from over. Together, Lyra and Elias would continue to explore, defend, and lead, showing that courage, intelligence, and trust could bridge worlds. And somewhere in the galaxy, far beyond the twin moons of the Zandari capital, stars twinkled with possibilities, yet to be discovered. Princess Lyra smiled, feeling alive in a way she never had before. The human beside her smiled too, and together they stepped forward, partners, allies, and pioneers, in a universe that had only just begun to see what humans could achieve. The gamble was over, but the legacy of courage, respect, and unity had only just begun.